Who are you? How well do you know about yourself? Have you ever asked by those questions? Sometimes, or there are some situations that it's really hard for us to answer those questions. Well, in this report or in this discussion, you will be able to understand yourself well and be able to identify what personality you have. Good afternoon, Ma'am Marjorie, and good afternoon, my dear classmates. I hope you're all doing great. Before we start our discussion, we would like to introduce ourselves first. I am Malia Garbinimbili. I'm 18 years old, a former UM student of Bulan National High School. I'm currently living at Bliss Bulan, Sorsogon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Abigail G. Gardola, 18 years old from ICS, Pawa, Bulan, Sorsogon, a former ABM student of Bulan National High School.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Althea Agleponeo del Campo from Barangay Zone 4, Bulan, Sorsogon.
We are the Group 1, and our topic is all about explaining the concepts and nature of self, as well as we will discuss the different representations and conceptualizations of the self from various disciplinal perspectives. These are the philosophical, biblical, and psychological.
My topic for today is the philosophical view of self. The philosophy of self is the study of the many conditions of identity that make one subject of experience distinct from other experiences. The self is sometimes understood as a unified being essentially connected to consciousness, awareness, and agency. It means may iba't ibang pag-aaral ng isang tao, iba-ibang experience at pagkakakilala ng isang tao. Ang bawat sarili natin ay may mahalagang konektado sa ating kamalayan at ahensya. Next is Socrates, know yourself. Socrates is principally concerned with man. He considered man from the point of view of his inner life. The famous line of Socrates, know yourself, tell each man to bring his inner self to life. The core of Socrates' ethics is the concept of virtue and knowledge. Virtue is the deepest and most basic propensity of man. According to Socrates, true wisdom is knowing what you do not know. So, an essential part of knowing yourself must be recognizing the limits of your own wisdom and understanding, knowing what you do genuinely know and knowing what you have yet to learn. So, ayon kay Socrates, ang tunay na karunungan ay ang pag-alam sa hindi natin nalalaman. Kaya't napakahalaga na makilala natin ang ating mga sarili upang malaman natin ang ating mga kakayanan at ating matututunan pa. Next is Plato, the ideal self, the perfect self. According to Plato, man was omniscient, of all-knowing before he came to be born into this world. With his separation from the paradise, truth and knowledge, and his long stay on earth, he forgot most the knowledge he had. So ayon kay Plato, lahat tayo ay may sariling kaalaman dito sa mundo. Next is Immanuel Kant, respect for self. Man is the only creature who governs and directs himself and his action to set up ends for himself and his purpose, and who freely orders men to the attainment of his aims. A person should not be used as a tool or device to accomplish another private. Ayon naman kay Immanuel Kant, tayong mga tao ay may malayang mamahala sa ating mga sarili upang makamit natin ang ating mga hangarin. Next is René Descartes, I think, therefore I am. Descartes states that the self is thinking entity distinct from the body. His first famous principle was cogito ergo sum, which means I think, therefore I am. Although the mind of the body are independent from each other and serve their own function and must use his own mind and thinking abilities to investigate, analyze, experiment, and develop himself. Inilahad naman ni Descartes na ang ating mga sarili ay may malayang gawin ang ating mga gustong gawin. Ngunit, dapat pa rin natin gamitin ang ating sariling isip upang gumawa ng magandang desisyon para sa ikakabubuti natin. John Locke, Personal Identity. John Locke holds that personal identity or the self is a matter of psychological continuity. For him, personal identity is founded on consciousness or memory and not on the substances of either the soul of the body. Ayon naman kay John Locke, ang ating personal na pagkakakilanlan ay nakabase sa ating memorya at hindi sa kaluluwa o katawan. David Hume, the self is the bundled theory of mind. Hume is skeptical about the existence of the self, especially on whether there is a simple, unified self and exists over time. For him, man has no clear and intangible idea of the self. He possesses that no single expression of the excess, rather the self is just the things to which all perception of a man is ascribed. Para naman kay Hume, ang tao ay walang malinaw at naiintindihan sa ideya ng sarili. Sa halip, ang sariling pananaw ay nakalaan para sa atin.
The biblical or Christian view of self. Stephen Lawson said, "A high view of God leads to a humble view of self. A low view of God leads to a haughty view of self. He raises the proud and gives grace to the humble." Exactly, because so much for all the humanity being taught in the church in the name of Christ. The longer I live, the more I realize how big God is and how small I am. It's everything and overall in all. And in any biblical or Christian view of self, self-fulfillment must never be permitted to become the controlling issue. The issue is service, the service of real people. The question is, how can I be most useful? Not how can I feel most useful. Based on Bible about the view of self. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 6 to 7. Humble yourself, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. Because on Christian view of self, God is all about life transformation, not behavior modification. When you truly encounter Christ, transformation is inevitable. As a Christian, are we supposed to think badly about ourselves? Not at all. The scriptural position is that we are to focus on God and others, not ourselves. The scripture written in Matthew chapter 22 verse 36 to 40 and Philippians chapter 2 verse 3 to 8. Any preoccupation with self, either in thinking too highly or too lowly, is an unbiblical response to God's word. The scripture starts from the position that we already love ourselves and command us to love others equally. As a matter of fact, we are to put the interest of others before our own. Philippians chapter 2 verse 3 to 4. And lastly, as a Christian view of self, when we evaluate ourselves according to sound judgment, what do we find? As a believer, we will find that God has reached down to us totally by grace to save unworthy sinners, making us a worthy child of God. We have been accepted by God. In Revelation chapter 3, verse 4, not because we deserve it, but because of God's love. We also now know by the scriptures that God has unique, uniquely equipped us to serve and minister for Him in this world, in, in His church. Our value is not based upon a comparison of ourselves with others. As a matter of fact, that is forbidden. And 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 12. But I found the position that we have in Christ and the gifts with which He has equipped us to live for Him. Because in biblical and Christian view of self, God created us. That, that's all. Thank you.
The psychological view of self. Sigmund Freud, the psychoanalytic theory of self. Freud asserts that the human psyche or personality is structured into two parts. These three structures are the ego, and superego. These three structures are developed at different stages in person's life. The first structure is the id, or internal drive. It consists of the body's primitive biological desires and urges, which when concerned with achieving pleasure and self-satisfaction, it lives unconscious. For example, a newborn baby will. The babies cry when they want to be fed and want an instant satisfaction, and it also have an impulsive behavior. The second structure is the ego, or the ego is the reality. This is the I part of the individual that gives him/her the sense of him/her own identity. The ego is the rational part of the personality. So ego is the personality that recognizes that our behavior have consequences. For example, a person cuts you off in the traffic. The ego prevents you from chasing down the car and physically attacking the offending driver. The last structure is the superego. Superego is the conscience. It is the part of the personality concerned with morals, precepts, standards, and ideas. The superego is also the critical faculty of the personality. This is the sense of right and wrong. The superego is personality that helps others first and do what's best for society. Freudian stages of psychosexual development. Freud also urges that the development of an individual can be divided into distinct stages characterized by sexual drive. As a person grows, certain areas become sources of
The
pleasure.
first stage of the psychosexual development is the oral stage. Age range birth to 1 year. During this stage, the infant's primary source of interaction occurs through mouth, so the rooting and sucking reflex is especially important. The second stage of psychosexual development is the anal, or expulsive phase. From the age 2 to 3 years old, the child derives the feelings of pleasure or pain from defecating. It covers the toilet training period. Freud believed that the positive experience during the toilet training stage serve as the basis for people to become competent, productive, and creative adults. The third stage of psychosexual development is the phallic. From the age of 3 to 6 years, the child gets curious about his/her genitals and becomes attached to the parent of opposite sex. The attraction of a boy to his mother is called Oedipus complex, while that of a girl to her father is called Electra complex. The fourth stage of psychosexual development is latency. From the age of 10 to 12 years, sexual motivations presumably recede in importance as the child becomes preoccupied with developing skills and other activities. The last stage of psychosexual development is the genital. After puberty, the deepest feelings of pleasure presumably become from heterosexual. During the last stage of psychosexual development, the individual develops a strong sexual interest in the opposite sex. This stage begins during puberty but lasts throughout the rest of a person's life.
Erik Erikson, the psychosocial stages of self-development. Erikson was primarily concerned with how both psychological and social factors affect the development of individuals. He has formulated 8 major stages of development. simultaneously presenting the individual with a crisis that he or she must overcome.
Trust versus mistrust. From birth to 1 year. The important event is feeding and the important relationship is with the mother. The infant must develop a loving, trusting relationship with the mother through feeding and comforting. Failure to resolve this conflict can lead to sensory distortion. Stage 2. Muscular anal. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. This stage is from 18 months to 3 years. They learn to start exercising their own will or they will feel shameful about becoming their own person. If this stage is resolved, they may become a dependent person later in his life. Stage 3. Locomotor. Initiative versus guilt. Age from 3 to 5 years. The important event is independence and the important relationship in this stage is family. The child may show too much force in this stage, causing feelings or guilt. Failure to resolve this conflict can lead to ruthlessness and inhibition. Stage 4. Latency. Industry versus inferiority. From age 6 to 12 years. The important event is school and the important relationships are teachers, friends, and neighborhood. The child must learn to deal with new skills. Failure to do so can create a sense of inferiority, failure, and incompetence. Stage 5. Adolescence. Identity versus role confusion. Age 12 to 20 years. Important event is development of peer relationships. The teenager must achieve a sense of identity in occupation, sex rules, politics, and religion. Failure to make these resolutions can lead to the repression of aspects of individual for the sake of others. Stage 6. Young adulthood intimacy versus isolation. Age 20 to 40 years. The important event is parenting and the important relationships are lovers, friends, and work connections. In this stage, the individual must develop intimate relationships through work and social life. Failure to make such connections can lead to promiscuity, exclusivity, and isolation. Stage 7. Middle adulthood. Generativity versus stagnation. Age 40 to 65 years. The important event is parenting and the important relationships are with children and the community. This stage is based on the idea that each adult must find a way to satisfy, support, and contribute to the next generation. It is often thought of as giving back. Failure to resolve this stage can lead to overextension or rejectivity. Stage 8. Maturity. Integrity versus despair. Age 65 to death. The important event is reflection on and acceptance of the individual's life. The individual is creating meaning and purpose of oneself and reflecting on the life achievements. Failure to resolve this conflict can create feelings of disdain and despair. And that's the end of our discussion. Thank you for watching and listening to us. We will now proceed to the assessment.